morning, everybody. I'm Mallory Smythe, and this is your Monday morning, where we at Endow seek to feed your feminine genius by providing just a small dive into the history, tradition, and story of our Catholic faith. And so this week is Holy Week, where we will celebrate the suffering, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, the very thing that makes us Catholic. And recently, Catholic theologians have given us a teaching that helps us to understand better what it means that Jesus is the sacrificial lamb. It's called the fourth cup. And to understand the fourth cup, we need to understand why the Jews celebrated Passover, what is entailed in the Passover, and how Jesus celebrated the Passover. And so the Jews celebrated the Passover meal to commemorate the night that God saved them out of slavery in Egypt. This was the night of the 10th plague when the angel of death was to pass over Egypt and kill the firstborn son of every family, unless you did what God commanded. Sacrifice a lamb, eat the lamb, put the blood of the lamb over your doorposts, and be ready to flee when the time was right. And then in future generations, God commanded that we celebrate and commemorate the Passover to not forget God's faithfulness to the Jewish people. And so the way that the Passover was celebrated, it was celebrated with 4 cups. The cup of sanctification, the cup of judgment, the cup of blessing, and then the cup of restoration. And the 4th cup, the cup of restoration, was meant to be the climax of the Passover meal, in the same way the Eucharist would be the climax of the Mass. And so not to celebrate it would be seen as very strange. And yet that's exactly what we see in the gospel whenever Jesus is with his apostles at the Last Supper. They celebrate the first 3 cups of the Passover meal, and then Jesus says, I will not drink again of the fruit of the vine until I come into my Father's kingdom. They then sing songs, and then they go out into the night where Jesus goes to pray on the Mount of Olives. It's very strange that they did not celebrate the 4th cup. And yet, when Jesus is in the Mount of Olives praying, he says, Lord, let this cup pass from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done. Let this cup pass from me. He then goes through his passion. He's finally on the cross, and he says, I thirst. And the Jewish people give him just a small sip of wine. He takes it, and he says, it is finished. But what is finished? Yes, Jesus' passion is finished, but also he drank again from the fruit of the vine, that 4th cup, that missing cup that was missing from the Last Supper. See, the sacrifice of the Last Supper was not completed until Jesus died on the cross, because Jesus is not only metaphorically the sacrificial lamb, but he is the fulfillment of the Passover. He is physically the lamb that was sacrificed to set us free from sin and death. Our God is so faithful. He is not only faithful in the spiritual realm, he's also faithful in the physical realm. Jesus is not only spiritually the lamb, but physically the lamb. And we commemorate that in the sacrifice of the Mass when we eat the lamb in the form of the Eucharist. And so this is our faith, and this is what we are celebrating this week. I'd love for you to just think about that and think about how good God is in the spiritual and in the physical. You can always learn more about church tradition at www.endowgroups.org. You can connect with us at Endow Groups on Facebook and Instagram, and you connect with me at Mallory A. Smythe on Instagram. Have a blessed Holy Week.